It's really put me in a position to make decisions.
Now I am the master.
Look, there are no women. There are people involved in powerful positions who are just not trying hard enough.
Don't get technical with me. What are you talking about?
Kathleen and like-minded people have identical ways of talking about the causes they advocate for or pretend to advocate for, right down to the words they use.
I have a lot of women to thank for getting me to where I am today, starting with my mom.
Right from the beginning, she makes it about gender. However, a person like Kathleen would define that without contradicting or damaging her worldview, but that's another issue. She doesn't say that she has any men to thank for her position, even though George Lucas practically handed her a career.
And you're in a powerful position. You're now running Lucasfilm. You were handpicked by George Lucas to do this, and you, for many reasons, said yes.
Let's compare this to a certain Duchess in one of her many meaningful interviews.
Who's been the most inspiring woman in your own life?
Gosh, there's so many. I mean, of course, my mom. I mean, and just I love women who I am able to look up to and say they have done so much in terms of leadership, but also promoting diversity and what she's like USA Network, especially. I feel really proud of.
Later, Kathleen also uses the buzzword diversity. Buzzwords are virtue signaling words that are fashionable at a particular moment in time or history. Their main function is to set and control the agenda while making the speaker sound morally superior. Thus, they are most often used deceptively and always for self-serving reasons. Self-serving because the speaker gives the impression that they're fighting for the common good, whatever that even means, when actually they're only fighting for themselves, what's in their own best interest, and there are huge financial incentives to joining the buzzword club. Let's continue analyzing the most revealing moments in Kathleen's interviews, but before we do, if you like the video, click the like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel for all updates. Let's go for it.
I went to this party of a colleagues in Vermont, and this woman walked up to me and she said, "You're Kathy Kennedy, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Well, I work for a law firm in Washington, D.C., and we filed a petition to deny against the station that you were working for. And we made a condition of the license that they hire women in technical positions, and you were one of them, and we've been watching you." So I at least felt good that I had managed to use the job in a way that has put me where I am today.
The quite remarkable thing here is Kathleen's willingness to admit that she wasn't hired because of her remarkable talent, but because of a quota. And not only willingness, but also taking pride in the fact, and even using the word fascinating about it.
What I think is really interesting is the fascinating thing that I look back on is that the fact that that opportunity was afforded me, it's really put me in a position to make decisions. That was the beginning. That was the opportunity that afforded me that position.
And apparently that's what was important to her, power. She doesn't mention a love of movies or filmmaking. Making decisions is the first thing on her mind. And that's the thing with buzzwords. They mean the opposite. When we hear someone promoting diversity, there's not only a presupposition that they care more about a person's innate characteristics than talent and merits, but also that other groups of people should be excluded. Thus, diversity is code language for exclusion, kind of like this picture. She upgrades interesting to fascinating by a process called self-repair.
What I think is really interesting is the fascinating thing that I look back on.
This way, she can guide the audience to think that her background story is a lot more fascinating than it is. Because there's nothing fascinating about being recognized for your innate characteristics. All of this exposes an entitled attitude, which obviously stems from the privileges or unfair advantages, depending on how you look at it, she was given early on. However, she still finds it in herself to complain because she has to keep the victim narrative alive. Without the victim narrative, it would all be about talent, and we can't have that because that would be uncomfortable to people that don't have talent.
It's something that is very, very perplexing because the media tends to go after the statistics on women directing, and women writing, but it's really more to do with women getting involved and getting jobs in all aspects of the entertainment industry, and that's what I feel hasn't changed.
This literally discriminating worldview Kathleen advocates for is by definition insatiable. To keep the narrative going for generations to come, people like Kathleen have to keep moving the goalpost, pretending that if they just reach this new goal, it'll be enough for them. But enough is never enough. It can't be, because that would be the end of the narrative, the end of future privileges. This is exactly why you should never base your company or institution on anything else than talent. As a leader or CEO, once you base your company on innate characteristics, something that people can't do anything to help, you open the door to people like Kathleen with their insatiable demands. And eventually you lose profit, because you upset your target audience and probably a lot of your employees as well. Next, she continues to expose her mindset.
I just recently went to a Saturday Night Live taping, and I was sitting at the front row of the balcony, and I leaned over and I was looking at a number of the people on the floor operating camera and stage managing, and all of a sudden I turned to my husband, I said, "Look, there are no women." And it was 1973 that I was hired as a camera operator, and there are still no women.
The job that she didn't do anything to earn. What a powerful testimony, and what a great argument for her cause.
And that's just, it's completely unacceptable. I have no idea why we can't change that.
The irony of Kathleen saying this, knowing that she herself was given the job. What she says is deceptive. She brings up the idea of having no idea why this is. Obviously then, she points to the fact that she has some kind of idea, since it's common knowledge that men and women choose different professions. You won't find many women in brick mason jobs either, just as you won't find many male nurses. By this logic, is that unacceptable too? Or is it only the most profitable work positions that need to have equality of outcome? There's your answer, I think. The predicate unacceptable is revealing, as it shows the legalistic nature of Kathleen's worldview. She pretends that she doesn't have any idea, and unacceptable is a call to action, because of course, inside Kathleen's worldview, people can't just choose freely. They can't be entrusted with that. They need strong people like her to decide for them. Anything to keep the narrative alive. Next, in line with what we've had to hear so far, we get a more explicit call to action. And once again, she highlights her own story as if it's the way to go, which not only speaks volumes about her mindset, but also about her complete lack of self-awareness.
Why do you think that this is the case?
I'm not sure I completely understand, other than the fact that there are people involved in powerful positions who are just not trying hard enough to make opportunities available that were made to me, over 35 years ago, that people are not reaching out and trying to make those opportunities available today.
Interesting how she reframes the privileges she was given as the positive word opportunities. Her language betrays her. Unintentionally, she keeps pointing to the fact that she does know why there's an uneven balance in certain professions. Let's break this down. Firstly, we notice a turn initial delay, indicating that this is a difficult question.
Why do you think that this is the case?
This is unexpected, as she should know why she thinks this is the case. If she can make the claim, she should also be able to provide the grounds for that claim. Secondly, the expression "you know" enters her language, showing that she's acutely aware of herself and the interviewer. So far, these two observations indicate internal stress. Obviously, she has a problem with this question, which explains why she evades it by blaming other people for not trying hard enough. This is the victim narrative on full display. Thirdly, she says not sure. Not sure isn't the same as saying I don't know.
I'm not sure I completely understand.
As we saw earlier, she obviously has an idea, just like everybody else. It's like asking, why aren't there more male nurses? Fourthly, she moderates her claim to not understanding with the adverb completely.
Completely understand.
This adverb also detracts from her claim to having no idea, which at this point we can now conclude was deceptive. Lastly, we can always recognize a deceptive victim narrative by the lack of specificity. If there were people who were actually deliberately creating an unacceptable, uneven balance, it would be easy to identify them. But because there aren't, and because Kathleen knows there aren't, it's very convenient for her to attack a nameless, faceless group. Much more convenient than holding each person accountable for their own decisions in life. Once again, this exposes an extremely entitled mindset.
And it may have something to do with unions. And I don't know if that's because of the roster system, not, again, providing those opportunities for women to get on those rosters and be a part of the system that allows for more diversity in technical positions. But it's still, there's an alarming number of women that are just not able to get those jobs.
It's ironic to hear Kathleen talk about diversity after hearing about how she was given a privileged position and called for action to introduce the same literally discriminating policies that got her job. This attitude is the exact opposite of diversity. People like Kathleen pretend that people have to look different, have to be born different, in order for there to be diversity. They ignore the fact that two people with the same innate characteristics can be very different from each other, have different plans, opinions, goals, etc. This exposes Kathleen's superficial thought patterns. She's all about outer characteristics, how people look, not inner characteristics. And it also shows that she, like many influential people, want to treat people as groups rather than as individuals, because groups are much easier to upset and control. The conjunction but marks a contrast. It minimizes or negates that which preceded it.
But it's still, there's an alarming number.
Here, Kathleen uses the conjunction to highlight the victim narrative, the alleged alarming number. This evasion is expected, as we've seen it forming since the onset of her answer.
Why do you think that this is the case?
She doesn't want to consider the fact that people choose differently. Blaming anything and everything but people's free will serves her narrative better. Next, Kathleen continues to reveal how she thinks, and unsurprisingly, all of her points have nothing to do with actual filmmaking, interesting plot lines, or talent. In the following, if you replace the word women with certain other words, what she says would actually be illegal. And in any case, it exposes a leader who's driven by ideology first and foremost, not what's best for the company.
Can you talk about what you're doing today, not only hiring women at Lucasfilm, but also in producing the new Star Wars episode, what you've done to instill more strong
Well, one of the
female
things,
characters?
I mean, the fact that the company was bought by the Walt Disney Company has been amazing because they very much support the fact that we are trying to grow in the workforce, a number of women in executive positions and in all positions inside the company, and with the movies that we're making and with the protagonists that we're putting in the stories. So I get a huge amount of support with that. But we have 50% of our executive team are women. Mm-hmm. And 6 out of 8 of the people in my story group are women.
Leaders, so-called, who are driven by ideology, are devastating to a brand.
You know, I'm a businesswoman. I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. What does evolve and elevate mean? It means inclusivity. And representation is at sort of the heart of evolution. I cast an incredible female choreographer. We cast Miles Teller and his wife Kelly Teller. But it was really crucial to me that if you see that spot, Kelly is the heartbeat of that spot.
What we have here is an example of what privileges and an extreme sense of entitlement can and will do to a person eventually. Kathleen takes pride in her ideological statements, and while that would go more or less unnoticed if she were merely speaking for herself, let's say on a blog with no followers, the fact that she represents a company in this interview and still talks like this speaks volumes about the fundamental problems. From politics to media and Hollywood, it should make us question the true intentions of these influential people, because not all that sounds good is good. What do you think about this interview? Let us know in the comments. See you next time.